Souls players with hot takes? Couldn't be. Hence the terrible intro. We are reacting to the Act Man. So let's see what Senor Act Man has. I do like these styles of video though, because I get more hot takes in one video. Anyway, let's see what Act Man has dug up for spiciest Shadow of Erdtree hot takes. Ooh, interesting.
What's up, everybody? This is
Oh, that's not fair. I want shade mail.
the Elden Man here.
The Elden Man. Aren't you like 30, bro? You're not that old. Come on now.
The flow of time sure is convoluted, isn't it?
We are amidst strange beings.
It's a strange land.
Hard to believe it's already been 2 years since
Hard to
Elden Ring
believe.
came out. And in my opinion, it was nothing short of a
It feels like 3 or
masterpiece.
4, to be
Anybody
honest.
who didn't like Elden Ring had their gamer card officially revoked. Given that From Software
True.
has raised the bar
Mine
with
was
the Dark
taken
Souls
away
trilogy
for a bit.
DLC and Bloodborne, we expected this, Shadows of the Erdtree, to be even better somehow.
My preconceived notion going into it was that it was going to be about as annoying as it actually turned out to be. I did not expect how hard Radahn was though, Consort Radahn. But ultimately I did kind of get what I expected-ish, because with as hard as bosses are in Elden Ring, you couldn't make them easier or even on the same plane, because then the Souls hard diehards would have been upset about it. So we actually kind of got what I expected. Now, not the world. The world was pretty crazy, and I didn't expect the scattered tree system, but
Question is, does it live up to the hype and expectations?
kind of.
The answer's a little more complicated.
Yeah.
However, the more things change,
The more they stay the same.
like every major release in the Soulsborne series, there's some juicy controversy to digest. Once again, the
Juicy.
flame has been linked, the Age of Fire continues, and the
It's
debate
always
around
gonna go on.
difficulty has been reignited. Some say
The only difference is this time it's a little warranted, unlike the last number of times where it's just people who didn't know how to play the game. Myself included sometimes.
Shadows of the Erdtree is too difficult, challenging, the bosses are
It is
overkill.
pretty-
It's bullshit. Many others are content to rely on the age-old saying, get good.
Get
those
good.
two words
Yeah.
are pretty motivating. Wife left you for another man, and
Get
you lost
good.
your job. Dog died. Get good. Stop crying. But who's right and who's wrong? Is it too challenging or not enough? To be honest, I've seen some pretty fair takes from both sides.
Yeah,
I think
it's-
there's valid praise and criticism for Shadows of the Erdtree.
It's one of the only times where maybe the difficulty's ridiculousness is not over-exaggerated. It still can be, but
But there's also room for some hot takes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
today, we're
Plenty
gonna be
of room
looking
for
at Some
that.
of the spiciest hot takes for Shadow
just because
of
it
the
is hard
Erdtree.
doesn't mean that
Ones
people
that
aren't
might
stupid.
make you go a little mad. So I'm actually gonna take this off because it's really fucking hot in here. And maybe by the end of this video,
The
I'll
shade
give you
man.
my own hot take.
Uh-oh.
What better place to start with hot takes
Act
than
Man's
from
got a
the
hot
man
take.
himself, Hidetaka Miyazaki,
Uh-oh.
who says,
Miyazaki?
I'm still in the process of making my ideal fantasy RPG. While Elden Ring is not quite it, it's getting close.
Yeah, that is such a crazy statement to me. Like, bro has the best build variety in any Souls game. He's got, I don't know about the best bosses he's ever made, but he's got a lot of great bosses. Like the whole world and lore, and this still is not it. I don't know if he even knows what he wants. I feel like he's gonna be in an eternal search for some kind of vision. It's some kind of eternal search that's never gonna end, and his games will get progressively worse from him going mad and trying to find this hidden gem that he just can't quite grasp in his brain.
What is he smoking?
A little
wasn't
bit.
quite good enough. Game of the year, not enough for me.
No, that's not what he's saying. That's not what he's saying at all. His ideal RPG has nothing to do with how well received the game was. It's how well he wants to look back at it and say, this is it. This is what I've always wanted, right? Elden Ring, I don't know what he would have thought was wrong with it. I'm not sure if he's talking about lore, gameplay. I don't know. Like, I know what I know what Miyazaki's talking about. Act Man may not, but it is a very tricky thing, I imagine, for Miyazaki to probably wrap his mind through.
You guys realize this man will never stop cooking. Like,
He won't.
refuses to leave the kitchen. Put
He
the
won't.
frying pan down, Miyazaki. Just put it down already. Seriously, bro
It's
made
burning.
7 critically acclaimed masterpieces in a row, and he still has the balls to say, I got one more in me.
I
The
got
thing
one
is,
more
for
in
the
me.
Souls series, which I consider Elden Ring to be part of,
Yeah.
I don't know how much further the bar can be raised.
Yeah.
I think it's time their next project should hopefully be another
Agreed.
sidestep like Sekiro or Bloodborne.
A lot of people have been saying that, and quite frankly, I agree, because Elden Ring's difficulty is as hard as you could possibly get without making it 100% objectively unfair from everybody's perspective. That's probably my own hot take, but have you seen Shadow of the Erdtree's bosses? If they were any harder, bro, it would be unfair, right? I don't... How do you go higher? And I think even FromSoft themselves said, we're not going to make a game as big as Elden Ring again. So, but how would he make his ideal RPG if he's not going to make another big thing like that? I'm a little confuzzled. It'll be interesting though.
Something that's completely separate from the, medieval dark fantasy style.
Not so much the medieval dark fantasy style, more about the dodge, hit, dodge, hit, dodge, hit, with some other play styles thrown in there.
And they can get more experimental. Still, I think it's very respectful to still be hungry when you're pretty much at the top. You know what I mean? Like, he's still hungry for more success.
No, he's not hungry for more success. He wants to make what he sees as a perfect game. I have a few games that I consider perfect. I would never want anything to change about them, but there's not a lot of those.
Since the discussion around difficulty in Shadow of the Erdtree is so prevalent,
I like how much I've been talking about just a single statement Miyazaki made, and I'm probably not going to have as many interesting things to say about the actual hot takes.
I think we should also once again hear from the man himself. Miyazaki on Elden Ring difficulty. I absolutely suck at video games. This guy, by all accounts, should have a massive fucking ego, but he doesn't. And that's what I think is so respectful. He just comes out and says, yeah, I suck at the games I make. Or maybe he's saying that to help people.
And that's why I hate when it's like, as Miyazaki intended. Like, no, he probably can't even beat the bosses his own team is making. Like, he probably comes up with design, story, concepts, maybe mechanics, but I doubt he's the one actually balancing them because he says he sucks at video games. So he's probably got a whole team wrapped around the idea of balancing, right? Making the animations and deciding how many frames an attack has, what the hitboxes of those attacks look like, etc., right? So now nobody can say as Miyazaki intended, because I guarantee you he is not the one doing all this stuff.
Well, that do suck.
If you hate how difficult Mesmer is, it's not Miyazaki's fault. Calm down. Probably.
Not feel so shitty about themselves. This next take is in Portuguese, so I don't know if it's a correct translation.
Oh,
but,
Portuguese,
and there
okay.
are people who still think Elden Ring is better than Red Dead 2. Oh, yep, see, there it is. There it is. Look at the fire graphics. Look at that. I mean, Elden Ring doesn't have that. It's not like Rockstar actually went through incredible crunch and somewhat horrible working conditions to achieve this level of detail. But we should expect that in every other game, too.
That's pretty stupid. That's like, I'm not saying it's as bad, but have you seen that picture of people who like try to compare number of pixels from Xbox to PlayStation in Minecraft? And there were people arguing about which one was better. Oh, that was a gem in internet history. That was an absolute gem. I love that picture. But yeah, there are some games that have detail like that, but Elden Ring is so ridiculously large and complex that it probably couldn't afford to have some of that stuff. Not to mention, I hate to dunk on FromSoft, but their PC ports aren't the best, and they also had to get the games on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. I don't know. I'm probably just making excuses for them, but no one really associates level of detail with quality game. There are probably tons of really garbage games out there that had an impressive amount of detail in them. I've played a lot of horror games that I consider to have an amazing amount of detail, but were kind of had their focus in the wrong place, so I didn't actually enjoy the experience. You know what I'm saying? Same thing here. If they focus so much on detail, they may have made a bunch of other oversights. Like, who cares? Why am I even talking this much about it? It's not that big of a deal.
Even when it doesn't matter and it's completely
Oh, the fan. I forgot to turn the fan off. Also, another thing I just noticed. Let's rewind a little bit.
Too. Little Jimmy's gonna stick.
Oh, crap. wait, what was that? This is some little kid sticking a fork in the outlet. Oh, that was no context behind that. What the heck? Okay.
There
right
it
here.
is.
So he throws the fire bombs at the bush. The problem with that, also, aside from just the quote-unquote lack of detail, is you're supposed to hide in these bushes. I don't think they want you throwing the fire bombs at bushes that you're supposed to hide in.
There it is. Look at the fire.
Yeah, those are the ones you're supposed to hide in. So, I'm sorry, what's the argument here? Like, you don't want to be able to cut those down. Plus, you can cut down certain shrubbery. They let you do it. They let you run it over, and there's plenty of destruction in Elden Ring. It just may not be as dynamic as Red Dead Redemption 2.
Graphics. Look at that. I mean, Elden Ring doesn't have that. It's not like
Elden Ring
Rockstar
doesn't have that.
Went through incredible crunch and.
It's not like, one's is like a dark fantasy RPG with freaking magic and giant monsters, and tons of like, you know, incantations and cults and all kinds of different creatures. And then Red Dead Redemption 2 is, you know, a somewhat based in reality game. You know, it's not like these are two entirely different settings.
Somewhat horrible working conditions to achieve this level of detail.
Yeah,
But we should expect
I'm not
that in
surprised.
every other game too, even when it doesn't matter and it's completely unnecessary. I'm pretty
Exactly.
sure this is a shitpost. I've never heard Elden Ring and Red Dead Redemption 2 brought up in the same sentence.
Yeah, I haven't much
Like,
either.
were people seriously comparing these two games?
Yeah,
There's this
exactly.
trend
That
on Twitter
comparison's
where
weird.
People will do these like weird comparison videos between two games that like are absolutely nothing alike.
Exactly.
You know, they'll be like, look at the detail in Last of Us 2. Just look at the facial graphics. What about the No. We're not talking about the story. Just the graphics. Also, look at Aloy's Peach Fuzz. Look at the Peach Fuzz rendering. Wow.
Peach Fuzz.
So much-
I forgot about that joke. Peach Fuzz rendering and crab graphics.
Better than Hellblade, the Peach Fuzz.
Oh yeah, it's like, oh, Hellblade's terrible, right?
Yeah, I know this is probably troll and a bait, but I'm gonna bite anyways. It's not enough to
I mean,
like
you might
their
as
favorite
well.
game. They have to find ways to compare it to whatever is popular. Really?
Yeah,
funny how
exactly.
Gamers
It's so
still
weird.
haven't realized that realistic graphics are one of the biggest reasons the game industry sucks right now.
Not wrong. Not entirely wrong. So much money being thrown at games nowadays. A lot of that probably goes into a lot of modern graphics. Not all the time. Not every time. Some of it could be having to work more because leadership is incompetent and you have to restart stuff over and over. Lots of rabbit holes you can go down in that road. I'm not going to talk about that. That is part of the problem, though.
This is a genuine point, though. Yay, your game has a realistic physics engine. In exchange, you will get one game per decade, and the game costs over $500 million to develop.
Yeah.
One flop, and your studio is
Yeah.
done for.
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly the point.
It's fucking sad. It's a huge risk, game development.
It is very sad.
Speaking of dumb comparisons,
Oh.
Elden Ring. Create your own character.
Create your own
Make
character.
dynamic
Make
choices
dynamic
that
choices.
change the entire story of your character.
Technically, yes.
Open world with 100 plus enemy types, 60 plus bosses,
Okay.
on-point landscape-driven exploration,
Yeah.
lots of interiors, and some of the best reward systems in the game.
Okay.
Reuse bosses aren't an issue since it has a ton of boss variety.
I do agree with that.
World design is insane and lore is good. Insane
Agreed.
boss roster.
I think I don't really care about the lore. Insane boss roster with amazing
Amazing
gameplay.
open world exploration, incredible Metroidvania, lots of interiors is boundary pushing. Most open world games are unable to use interiors.
To the same extent Elden Ring does, right? I don't think that's not correct. Because according to I think what they mean by that is open worlds have so many buildings to make it look more alive, and then suddenly you just can't go in the buildings. I believe that's what they're talking about, not... Because Elden Ring, how many interiors does Elden Ring actually have? Like, when you really think about it, how much of it isn't just part of the open world? Like, you have the occasional fort, you got the legacy dungeons. Like, the world's not flooded with buildings. But I know what he's talking about, so we'll bypass that a little bit.
Shows excellence in terms of world design, art direction, and content.
Yeah.
Objectively, the best open world designs out there. So he's glazing. He would probably lick Miyazaki's nutsack if he could. Why is this a hot take? Because
Yeah.
compared
I'm wondering.
to The Witcher 3,
Uh-oh.
kill things, make choices that barely affect the story. A character either dies or loses relevance in the plot. Repeat for 50 hours. You left out fight monsters. Kill them. Choices that barely affect the story. A character dies. When's that ever been important?
I was just saying, technically the only choices you make in Elden Ring are lead to different endings, but don't actually have immediate consequences a lot of the time. It does sometimes, but not a lot of the time. I can't think of... The only choice I can think that actually affects the world in some way, and anything you're doing, is how you choose to burn the Erd Tree. If anything, Elden Ring's choices are kind of just either character dies or loses relevance in their plot and their quest ends. You can simplify a lot of games down as far as you want if you want to really get nitpicky about it.
In storytelling. If you really want to hop into the fire, just go on Facebook. You will find some crazy shit. So I
Facebook?
usually laugh.
Facebook? Well, wait, we're going to Facebook now? Yo, we really are living in dark fantasy, bro. Okay, so I'm actually going to read this before Actman does, and then maybe I'll skip over to see what he says. Okay, so I usually laugh at complaining posts, but this time I need to make one. This game would honestly be better if we didn't have to heal. Interesting. Let's continue. I want my full health bar. Let's divide our health and magic bars based on sacred tier level and do away with the stupid flasks. Seriously, the only reason I can't beat some of these bosses is because I constantly have to stop fighting to heal. It can be an issue in DLC. Up to 14 times per fight. That's ridiculous. If you have to heal all 14 times, skill issue. Managing my stamina against relentlessly spammed attacks is already enough of a challenge without having to come up to a dead stop and endure a painfully slow animation of my tarnished drinking out of a stupid flask. If they're talking about base game, stupid. This is a really stupid take. The bosses do give you plenty of chances to heal. If you're talking DLC, the point could be made, but the way they're framing it is terrible. While Mija's frenzied flame beam is closing in at the speed of light, that's all I'm at. He did bad punctuation. That's all I'm asking. The bosses get their full health bars, let me have mine. That is all. Have a good day. That isn't... I don't know if the person intended for this, but that is a pretty interesting concept. What if you just had your full... Instead of healing, you just got full health upgrades and your health ended up being like a huge bar, kind of like a boss health bar? That would be interesting. That also possibly make for some more dynamic PvP combat. I don't think this person intentionally wanted to make a good point, though. But they do seem to be talking about DLC, because when they say Mija's frenzied flame beam, they're probably talking about the one where the boss input reads you and shoots his undodgeable beam to hit you. So, admittedly, the bosses do have a bit of an issue in the DLC of constantly attacking, especially when you're trying to heal. Especially Mija, though, not as bad. This person doesn't have a bad point to make. I think it's just they're framing it as too much of a whiny complaint, so they're going to look silly, even if they have an actually somewhat decent point. I don't agree you should take healing out, but Feeble King actually made a good point. I hate to say that, but Feeble King made a good point. Maybe they should have sped up the healing animation so that it wasn't nearly as risky to do as it is in the DLC. DLC healing is actually very difficult.
A complaining post, but this time I need...
And now I feel like Actman's going to have his own hot take in retort.
To make one. This game would honestly be better if we didn't have to heal.
What?
I want my full health bar.
What?
Let's divide our health and magic. They're not going to get rid of a core mechanic that's like healing. Yes, you should be able to heal in the game. You have to make that choice when you're fighting a boss. Do you get greedy or do you back off and try to heal or try to apply a buff? I think there is a point to be made about how small the window of opportunity is in between attacks with certain bosses that like a lot of items and shit you can't really use.
Especially in Consort Radon. You can't even summon for crying out loud. Yes, I did summon. I did beat him legitimately myself, but holy crap, it took hours and hours and hours.
There's a point to be made about that, but to like, you want the full health bar? You just want that shit like stacked 14 times.
That actually looks really good. Look at that screen. That actually looks kind of like engaging. I don't know why. I actually like that idea, but not because of the complaint he's making. Just I want to see how it would play out. Like I want to see that alternate universe where your health goes up. Like maybe you'd have health items, but not exactly the Crimson tier, and you're not actually expected to use it all that often. Like what if you just had a ridiculously long health bar, and you're supposed to use that one health bar to get to the boss, and then to fight the boss after you rest at a site of grace? Like that sounds so interesting. Like how much of that would change the dynamic of the game? That sounds really cool. Someone, yo, can we get a mod like this? That actually sounds like I just want to see how it would play out. Same thing with magic. Like you don't actually have to restore your magic. You just have a magic bar based on based on your flask allocation. You can just have a longer bar of magic. Yo, moving on.
Green, you know what? Yeah, this is good. This is an improvement for sure. I have to heal up to 4.
I mean, granted, it wouldn't be like that if you just changed it immediately. Like, no, we don't want to do that. But it does look interesting. It looks like something that could be experimented with.
Having to come to a dead stop and endure a painfully slow animation.
That's the part that does make him look silly. This is the fastest healing animation out of all of the typical Souls games. Maybe not Sekiro, but I'm pretty sure, I don't know about Bloodborne, but I'm pretty sure this is the fastest healing we've ever had.
Of my tarnished drinking out of a stupid flask. I want to meet this person and I want to watch them play Dark Souls 2 for the first time. And I'm just going to be staring in their eyes, waiting to see their expression. Dark Souls 2 fans be like, yeah, boys, who wants to get fucked up? Beat this.
Oh, I would love that too. I just watch that guy play Dark Souls 2. I mean, you can use life gems, but not a lot faster.
Boss first try with no summons, but it still doesn't count since I used Blasphemous Blade, apparently. Actually, you're right. That doesn't count. You can't
doesn't
use
count.
The things that I don't use. I'm just starting to think that Elden Ring is an easy game, but we have to force a bunch of gameplay rules on ourselves to make it hard. That's the ticket.
It kind of is, but then my complaint with Elden Ring is you don't know where that crap's at. The world is freaking huge, and you're probably never gonna find it like I did in my first time. Even finding upgrade materials can sometimes be a bit of a chore, and a lot of running around. But no, the guy is right though. I mean, Elden Ring players do kind of just make things harder and then call that the right way to play. It's extremely irritating. As someone who advocates for build variety heavily, and that's why I don't like Dark Souls 3, moving on.
That's basically Elden Ring. And you can see this in the vast difference between Elden Ring and
Yes.
Sekiro. I think Sekiro
Yes.
is the hardest game From Software has made.
I'm trying to remember my first times. To be honest, I did not rage nearly as hard at Sekiro as I did in Elden Ring, but rage is kind of relative. Sekiro was a whole different learning curve. I had more fun with it. Hard to say if it's no, I guess Sekiro is more difficult on the surface because in Elden Ring, if you don't find the stuff that you don't know the location of, then the game's gonna be harder.
Because you can't bullshit your way through it. You
True.
can't just leave this boss and go grind some runes or souls to buff your stats.
I mean, you can grind to get different techniques, but if you suck at the game, it's not gonna change anything.
In Sekiro, the progression is very harshly gated, but in Elden Ring, it's open,
True.
it's free. That's the benefit of the open world, is that people have all these tools.
And that's the only reason I don't agree with people who say that the game could have just been linear because they reuse so much content. Who cares? The caves look the same, the catacombs look the same. I don't agree with that because there's so many things in Elden Ring you can't fit it in a linear design.
To fight the enemies with. You could argue
Granted, I don't like how the world handles difficulty in that you have to go find certain things to help you. Like, have to, and you don't know any way to get it at all. But regardless, I don't think the game should have not been open world.
the problem is that there's too many tools. It's a hard balance to strike where you're trying to make things that are fun, flashy, and cool, but also make them balanced. Like, if you want to cheese your way through Elden Ring, you can. And if From Software didn't want you to do that, then they wouldn't have put these tools in the game in the first place. That being said, I think there are legitimate criticisms about like how bosses are designed, how levels are designed, the arenas you fight enemies in, whether or not that's interesting and providing a unique challenge. It's not so much like I just want to fight a really, really hard boss with a tough moveset. It's also, how do you get to that boss? Do you have to traverse down some fucking poison-infested village to get to a hot spider witch? And is that challenge satisfying when you overcome it? Like, that's kind of the ticket with difficulty in these games. It's never really been about the difficulty. That's always been an expression of the harsh world.
And again, I agree with Feeble King. They're in that FromSoft is starting to transition their focus a little hard towards difficulty. And I think them transitioning away from Elden Ring's open world style is a good thing. Let's wipe. Let's start again. Let's do something else, right?
The game further. For me personally, I enjoy the challenge of learning a boss's moveset and all the proper timings, because when you hit that like 6 dodge combo and you can get through it, you kind of feel like a god.
It does. It feels good to an extent, but every boss has like 50 humongous combos, and they also do a crap ton of damage if you make even one tiny little mistake. And that's why a lot of people find learning the boss to be extremely irritating, and to a degree, maybe not even worth it. I've beaten all the bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree by myself, melee only, and to be honest, after I've done that, I'm not going to do it again, because I don't find meticulously learning every freaking frame perfect timing to be worth doing. I'm not going to do it. I've done it once, I'm done. I'm not going to do it again.
It's the same thing with parrying, timing attacks. It all comes down to timing.
Nice parry. I learned to parry her a little bit, but I found it to be not really worth executing. He's happy.
No pause button in a single player game is just straight up bad design. I don't care. Well, it's not a single player game, but I get what you're saying. It can be. These games have never had a pause feature, and I don't think they ever will. The reason, I think, is because of immersion. Once again,
I don't agree. Here's the thing. Elden Ring actually does have a pause button. You go to your equipment menu, you go into the equipment menu, you hit the back button, whatever that may be, and then you go to menu explanation, and then it pauses the game. And here's the thing. I've actually used that in the middle of boss fights. It didn't actually change anything. Now, in games like Dark Souls, if you hit the pause button, or actually in any of these games where you hit the pause button, the whole screen is still displayed in front of you, whatever's in front of you. So there could be a argument to be made about exploiting things that way. But after being able to pause the game, I found it to be a life-saving thing, like just so convenient. It didn't actually affect all that much, so I might actually advocate for a pause button. Because it didn't actually make... What the crap is this? Because it didn't actually make all that much of a difference. Like, are people really so immersed in the game that a pause button would break that? If so, maybe you have a bit of an issue. For a while, I was advocating for no pause button, but now that I've actually had one, I don't see much of a difference. I say just put a pause button in. It doesn't really matter. And since you can pause the game that way, then in multiplayer... How would that work in multiplayer? I think maybe the world just doesn't pause when you hit the menu explanation button, but I don't know. I know it's a bit of a hot take on my part, but I really didn't see enough of a difference to just not have a pause button.
You cross that fog door, you gotta lock that shit in. You gotta lock in.
Maybe don't be able to pause during bosses, but be able to pause somewhere else. I think that's a good in-between.
And it's just you and the boss in your world. You can't worry about what your fucking kids are doing. If you got kids,
you may need to pause to stop your kid from putting a fork into a socket.
Little Jim.
If you have a kid that has an issue with doing crap like that, why are you playing video games and not focusing on them a little harder? Or why didn't you hide the forks? Like, there's some bad parenting. There's some bad parenting going on here.
He's gonna stick a fork in the outlet.
At least now I got the context behind this picture. Just accidentally zooming up forward to that was so funny.
Let him fry, okay? Survival of the fittest. Get that done.
Let him fry. Let him cook.
Smart enough to beat Elden Ring, so what's the point in raising him? But I think being able to pause like mid-fight would take a lot of wind out of the game's sails. It would take away from the intensity of a boss
to a point, maybe, but
in the game. Like if somebody calls me when I'm fighting a boss in Elden Ring, this is pretty much what I say.
Fuck! Dude! I'm busy! Call back later!
But it's like, it's okay to advocate for more accessibility. I just respectfully disagree that these games should have a pause feature. I think it's funny that Kai Cenat, like the biggest streamer on Twitch, has been playing From Software games for like, what, 2 months? And he understands these games better than some longtime FromSoft fans.
That is a weird thing. Some people will come in and actually have like base takes, and they've only played like Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, and Elden Ring. And yet, for a long time, FromSoft players seem to have had it so good for so long that they just think, oh yeah, magic shouldn't even be in the game. You know, magic shouldn't be there.
If you went through all that hassle 2 years ago, why the fuck would they make a DLC for you to breeze past?
Yeah, that's the only thing about the DLC. Elden Ring was hard to a point where they had to make the DLC harder, but Elden Ring was so hard that it was kind of already pushing the limits. And now the DLC has pushed the limits even further, and to be honest, I didn't find it very fun. So, the only one I find fun to fight anymore is kind of just Mesmer, to be honest. He's not even really my favorite of them, but he's kind of the only one I find that's actually kind of fun to fight once you learn him. But he's also way harder to learn than a lot of the bosses. And also he's got a ridiculous amount of particle effects on the screen. Like, it is skill issue to a point. I think anyone who struggled with someone like Horrendous or Mesmer, Consort Radon can complain as much as they want, to be honest, as long as they don't make up things to support their complaining.
And be done with in a day or 2.
Guys, we're complaining about difficulty and challenge. You know the drill. We don't fuck around here. I mean, okay, we bitch, we moan, we break our controllers.
Yeah, we casually break our controllers.
Quits, and then we boot up the game the next day.
Yeah,
okay? Until
not
that
wrong.
fucking boss is dead on the ground forever. Booyah!
Ooh!
Woo!
Nice.
It would be disappointing if Shadow of the Erdtree didn't ramp up the difficulty.
It would be, and that was kind of part of the problem. Like, the base game had Millennia. How do you get harder than Millennia? How are you expected to make a DLC to a game who peaked with Millennia? And they actually did make bosses harder than Millennia, mechanically speaking, as far as having reactions and things. Like, they basically made every boss Millennia, but then just took out the healing on every hit. Every boss is about as difficult as Millennia at this point.
Breezed through it, that would be pretty shitty.
It would be.
I think that's the reason
It would be pretty
why
bad.
FromSoft forced players to beat Moog to gain access to the DLC. Because if you can beat Moog, you can beat every other boss in the game.
I actually don't find Moog all that hard. He's not hard mechanically. He's hard because he spreads fire around the entire freaking arena, and fighting him is near impossible that way. So, but his moveset's actually not hard to dodge at all. He's actually got a very easy to learn moveset. It's arguably one of the easier bosses in the game in that sense, but he throws fire everywhere. It doesn't disappear for so long that it makes the boss artificially difficult.
But I need some spicier takes, and
True, these weren't exactly super spicy.
think I have just the answer.
Uh-oh.
Now, this video is from a very small creator, so I'm not sure if I want to show his channel name or the title of the video, because I don't want to inadvertently send a bunch of hate his way. But I feel like
Respectful.
he's so entertaining, I have to talk about him.
So
Okay.
I've been thinking a little bit about Elden Ring lately, kind of how quickly it's fallen off, how it's irrelevant, how the DLC hasn't salvaged the game.
He just hit me with 8 stuns in 8
Yeah.
seconds.
He just stun locked you, bro.
Kind of how quickly it's fallen off, how it's...
It didn't fall off very quickly. It took. I feel like people say this about any game that just so happens to be single player focused with like some only slight multiplayer in it. Like no single player game lasts forever unless you're like Halo or a very specific RPG of some sort. Like single player games don't really last forever. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to provide you with an experience, and you pay for that experience. You love it or you don't love it. You move on. And for Elden Ring, a lot of people probably didn't love it, but it was one of the best-selling games, if not the best-selling game of that year, I believe. So,
It's irrelevant, how the DLC hasn't salvaged the game.
and then the DLC itself also brought it back to its ultimate hype. And yeah, Actman's about to display that here.
How quickly it's fallen off, how irrelevant it is. This has to be masterful trolling, because
It has to be, yeah.
right out the gate,
That's pretty
I'm
bad.
already angry.
There have been really interesting lines of thought that have come.
I like this setup, by the way. I'm like down here, Actman's up here, and then you got this guy in the middle right there. Yeah, this is a lit setup.
From thinking about this game and the attempts at making this a cultural phenomenon.
Why does this guy feel like he's like Phil Spencer's son
He's-
or something? Is that crazy? I feel like he
What?
talks kind of like him.
There's been a lot of
He's not. I have not heard Phil Spencer talk that many times, but he's not wrong. He does kind of come off that way. Also, why is this guy just saying like the complete opposite of what actually happened in our universe? This does feel like masterful trolling. I'm not gonna lie. He's literally saying the complete opposite of everything that's happened. Is he? I'm not gonna think about it too hard. Let's just go on.
damage control in regards to the difficulty, right? People are trying to gaslight those who criticize the DLC as simply having been filtered by the difficulty. Like, nobody is complaining about the difficulty in Shadows of the Year Tree, in my experience. The game is easy, it's simple, it's a breeze to get through.
Pardon me, I'm stuck in a limbo state of deciding whether I should be laughing or ranting. And I haven't decided yet. I've decided I'm gonna laugh. Just let's laugh along with Backman. I was stuck in a state of limbo there for a moment. You'll have to forgive me.
He's fucking trolling.
He has to
He's
be, yeah.
trolling me. There's
no
no
way.
If you take what he says at face value,
Yeah, there's no
it
way.
makes me mad. Makes me want to convert to the Church of the Frenzied Flame.
Murder everything. I'm having a hard time believing he's not trolling as well. This is, if he is, it's really well done. He's a good actor. He's getting the business.
Seeing like the response to my my criticisms of like the DLC and the base game and From Slop as a whole, I kind of get.
Did he just say from slop? Bruh.
From slop.
Yeah, he did.
From slop.
I've long talked about how other video game titles are far more hardcore and intense than anything From Slop has ever done.
I mean, games, if there are games that are more hardcore than FromSoft, it's probably usually not for a good reason. Like, what's that one rhythm game that's like, or not a rhythm game, it's a bullet hell. It's a bullet hell game that's like infamous for basically being literally impossible to anyone, period. When a game is as hardcore as that, it's not usually with good intention. It's usually just to be annoying. I can't imagine anyone makes those games without, in the back of their mind, being a little evil. So, more hardcore than FromSoft. How do you get more hardcore than From Software? What specifically I don't know.
You know, I've talked about Super Monkey Ball, Monster Hunter, and stuff like that.
More intense, and he brings up Super Monkey Ball. But is he wrong? Bro, how
Is
does
he?
that
I don't know. I feel like it's a bit of a mislead. I don't know what Super Monkey Ball is. That sounds deceptive. It sounds misleading. Like it actually could be a hard game, and I don't know what it is. I could just look it up, but to be honest, that'd be putting too much energy into what sounds like the ramblings of a madman.
and say all this stuff with a straight face? Like, I respect it.
Yeah, I kind of do too.
Something that I think
that's
really
crazy.
needs to be-
You can't act that well. If he's either really good at acting, or he's lost his mind.
be addressed that needs to be brought up is that Elden Ring is absolutely easier than the Dark Souls games.
Nope, not even close. I think Dark Souls 3 handled difficulty terribly, and I still think it's easier than Elden Ring. Not even close. And he said Dark Souls specifically, not Sekiro, not like Armored Core or something. Specifically the Dark Souls games. Not even close. Not even close.
He knows his shit because he knows everything he's saying is gonna be like
super
inflammatory. It's gonna spark wild debates. Like if I said that, there would be hundreds of comments being like, "You're wrong, Act Man." Like this guy knows his craft.
He does.
There's
He
no
really does.
editing. He only calls From Software From Slop. This is a good troll.
It has to be.
The game has been casualized. The fact that this is only just dawning on me now really just goes to show you just how
What was it?
little
Oh, he's using the Beast
respect
Claws.
From Slop fans have for the older Dark Souls games, right? They don't.
That's like the only inkling of truth that you could possibly get out of this. Like some FromSoft fans who started with Elden Ring or started with Dark Souls 3 or maybe even Sekiro, they go back to Dark Souls 1 and just don't have any respect for where it started, where a lot of their favorite mechanics came from, how they evolved over time, right? And while I do like Dark Souls 1 better than a lot of these games, it's hard to deny that the evolution into Elden Ring is pretty crazy. Like, you gotta respect it. Even in Dark Souls 2, you have to respect Dark Souls 2. It tried a lot of crazy things.
Talk about them. They don't play about them at all. They don't care.
They don't play, they don't talk about, they don't care about the old Dark Souls games. Like, I know it's a troll, but
That's the only close to true thing, but even then, I still think a lot of people who played Elden Ring at least respect the legacy of the Dark Souls games.
I still want to debate him on that.
There isn't really much of a
Don't
push
fall for
to debate as to whether or not Elden Ring is better than Dark Souls, right? Aside from PlayStation fans.
That was one part in Dark Souls 2 that was particularly annoying. This room right here that you're seeing on screen, this room was so annoying. You either had to run straight for the boss, or that one hidden bonfire above in front of you, or somehow find a way to get these guys down really quickly, because they just show up and immediately wreck your face.
To debate as to whether or not Elden Ring is better than Dark Souls.
That's pretty
right?
classic Dark Souls 2 gameplay.
PlayStation fanboys who will advocate for Bloodborne being better, there is no real discord.
And just to add the cherry on top, he goes for the PlayStation fanboy label.
Of course, on whether or not From
Nice
Soft
parry.
has been falling off or not.
Saying this like just 2 years after they won Game of the Year and then releasing Shadows of the Erdtree to the reception it's gotten.
Again, I think they're both wrong right now. I don't think he's talking about sales and popularity. I think he's talking about falling off in philosophy and difficulty. He's still wrong, but Actman's also kind of wrong by assuming he's talking about sales.
And I find that really, really interesting that everything FromSoft does is seen by the community as simply being better and more difficult. Like we saw that with the DLC, right? Where everybody is trying to say that Shadow of the Erdtree is far harder than the base game of Elden Ring. But is it harder than Dark Souls? Is it harder than Demon Souls?
Yes.
Those are actually interesting questions because depending on how and when you played those games, like I started with Dark Souls 1, then Demon Souls.
Oh, I see what Actman's saying. Good question. Like maybe at first Sekiro was harder than the DLC. Because at least the DLC lets you use different playstyles and options, right? But then when you get into, it's like when you play. I get that. Okay.
2, 3, and then I played them in order. And playing them in that order, like each one was challenging in a completely different way.
It did feel
really
like that,
hard
yeah.
to describe which one was harder. Wow, a shitpost that makes you think. That's Wow.
Weird how that works.
You know, it's
Crazy,
not as
bro.
hard as Monkey Ball, I can tell you that much. But like,
Okay, I can't do this. Hang on. What the crap is Monkey Ball? A series of arcade platform video games initially developed by Amusement Vision, published by Sega. 2001 started with Monkey Ball, ported to the GameCube as Super Monkey Ball. If it's on the GameCube, I could play it on an emulator. Like I had to see this gameplay. Super Monkey Ball has the player move their character around in a gachapon ball. The crap is that? By tilting the direction gravity pulls them down. Okay, so it's like that one. It's like that one planet on Super Mario Galaxy where you're Mario having to like direct a ball and it's kind of just doing its own thing as opposed to actually moving. But as we saw in the little flash image there that he used, that the character is like in the ball, so it's more like you moving the ball. I could see how a game like that could be pretty hard. I don't know if it actually is hard, but it sounds like it has the possibility of being hard. Okay, I'm sorry, I got distracted. You could probably hear the Battlefront 2 sound. You can hear Battlefront 2 sound effects. Opera GX, baby. That's it. That's what it's doing. Anyways, I'm sorry. I got distracted. I had to find out what the heck all that was about. Super Monkey Ball, bro.
when you really sit there and really think about, when you really start to think about like, wow, nobody I know is playing the DLC or cares about it at all, you know.
Complete happenstance. Got nothing to do. I know plenty of people who just aren't into Souls games. Actually, I don't think I know anyone in real life. My cousin played Elden Ring. He likes it. He loves it, I think. We played it together. We had a lot of fun. Other than that, he's not played the Dark Souls games much. He hasn't played Sekiro. I don't think I actually know anyone who plays Souls games, but you can't say, oh, no one cares because I don't know anyone who cares, right? That's stupid. That's a stupid statement. Correlation, causation, etc.,
Like, when
etc.
you really start to like look at like, oh, 5 billion units sold, that's great, except, you know, that's probably the absolute peak it's gonna get, right? You know, it fell off very quickly after that.
Yeah.
Boy, some games don't even sell like a million to start with, like 5 million units sold. I don't know why I'm thinking about that too hard. I probably should stop.
It fell off after 5 minutes.
Let's let Actman do this for a second. Let me calm myself.
Million sales. Wow. This has been a real treat.
Like,
It
it's not
has,
gonna be-
it
there
has.
wasn't some major resurgence of interest in Elden Ring, and
Again, single player game. Like, we're not talking about Rainbow Six Siege. We're talking about Elden Ring. Like,
See what I'm saying? He's so good at... I'm just going to be reiterating myself if we continue watching this. I'm just
Yeah,
going to
exactly.
say, wow, that makes me angry. Great troll. Hey, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep up the great content. I love it.
he will get viewership if he keeps that up. I guarantee it. As long as he has a half decent clickbait title, he'll absolutely be popping off.
I've made
I say that as I struggle to actually do clickbait myself, but that's besides the point.
this comparison before, but it feels like Elden Ring is in the same boat Skyrim was a decade ago, right? When that game came out and everybody swore up and down it's the greatest game ever, and yet, like, you know, actual Elden Ring fans, actual Elder Scrolls fans, excuse me, you can't even keep these games similar. They're so generic.
I don't know in what world you could call any other game Elden Ring. Under what context would you call a game Elden Ring? That's not generic in the slightest. Is he saying Skyrim fell off? Dude, it has one of the most popular modding communities ever made. Like, ever in a game. The game was groundbreaking. I'm not a huge Skyrim fan. I like it fine. I just I couldn't delve into it like a lot of people did. You know, it's still a good game though. But I'm not going to come over here and say, like, oh, Elder Scrolls V Skyrim wasn't actually that big of a deal. Like,
God damn it. Oh, got me
Actman's feeling
again.
it.
Elder
Don't worry, Actman. I'm doing it for you. I'm feeling the pain for you, so you don't have to feel it yourself. You don't have to talk. I'll do it for you, my man. It's okay. It's okay.
Scrolls fans came out and said, like, no, like, Skyrim is disappointing, right? It's shallow, it's basic, it's uninspired.
I do actually know about that. There are people who say it's like, okay, well, Morrowind and Oblivion, or no, just Morrowind. Morrowind had a feeling of world. The world felt more like a world because it didn't have markers. You had to actually figure out where to go yourself. But let's be honest, that was probably hardware limitations to a point, how early the games were. And I think Oblivion did add markers. And that was a 360 era game. I have heard people say that about Skyrim, and I get that, but to say that it fell off or anything is just silly.
Morrowind was better.
The debate around like which Souls game or Elder Scrolls game is the best in its series is much different than like, are these still objectively good fun
Exactly,
games?
exactly.
And the answer is yes. All of the Souls games are fantastic. It just comes down to personal preference, which one you prefer the most.
Agreed.
The Elder Scrolls has been fun.
Same thing about Elder Scrolls. That's like, some people probably prefer the weird openness of, not weird, but some people probably prefer the openness of Morrowind, like figuring things out yourself, you know, feeling like an actual explorer adventure, like you're interacting with this world. In Skyrim, you can actually turn markers off. It won't be as easy to find things as with just notes as it would be in Morrowind probably, but you can turn markers off if you want to experience that for yourself.
Falling off for a long time.
Now he's talking shit about Elder Scrolls. Well, I mean, he's actually not
I was gonna say, he's not wrong about that.
Online, you know, that's the new game, Elder Scrolls 6. Yeah, 6 years since the trailer, boys. 6 years.
It's shocking.
It's been 6 years? Jeez, bro. That literally was just we were working on that trailer, wasn't it? Wow, 6 years.
Shocking to me, you know, as a real hardcore gamer, how often.
Okay. To be fair, he looks the part. Ooh, that was a little weird.
Like, a lot of the people who advocate for Elden Ring don't really seem to know all that much about video games in general, right?
The way he slinks in those subtle insults to people who really, really love these games is it's just chef's kiss.
This guy is really good. I don't know if this guy is really good or really bad. He is pretty masterful. I think I could pull something off like this, but it would take like an hour of me really getting in the zone.
The stereotypical, like, modern gamers, the kind of people who will seriously tell you that Elden Ring is hardcore, right? That is the Elden Ring audience. You know, people who don't even know what's out there. This is the reality, right?
I don't know what context is he speaking in? Just difficulty? Is he just talking about difficulty right now? I'm getting more confused the more I listen to him. Like, what context are we talking about? Because the game doesn't really hold your hand at all. If you don't know where something's at, tough luck. You're just gonna die, right? If you couldn't find the one cave in this one giant region that had the right upgrade material, tough luck. You're just gonna die because you're not doing enough damage, right? How much more hardcore does it really need to get? Is he talking about the fact that you can cheese? I'm so confused. I think he has to be trolling because he's not even contextualizing anything.
They are like the Marvel consuming, like, mainstream lowest common denominator slop, right? They are the people who show up to Adam Sandler movies.
He's comparing FromSoft fans to Adam Sandler movies as the lowest common denominator. God, finish this video.
But now, you're really seeing them, like, get more aggressive about it. You know, like, aggressively try to pretend like, no, FromSoft is the hardest game series ever. Oh, it's way better than Zelda. Oh, like, and they'll go.
It's what more than Zelda? Let me hear that again. I didn't hear that part. Do it.
About it, you know, like, aggressively try to pretend like, no, FromSoft is the hardest game series ever. Oh, it's way better than Zelda.
Oh, just better than Zelda. I mean, probably is to an extent. I don't know.
Like,
I really need to play a Legend of Zelda game. Someone remind me. Someone just, like, show up one day and remind me to do that.
And they'll go to great lengths to try to discredit them and dismiss all their arguments, right? Because
they do. FromSoft fans do have a tendency to do that, to just kind of completely dismiss any idea of criticism and just say, oh, no, it's still good. Or, oh, the music and presentation was good, that automatically makes a boss good. I could go on about that.
Them not enjoying Elden Ring is sacrilegious and it should be condemned.
He's not wrong. I'm
exactly
surprised.
He's not wrong.
That I think is a 100% troll.
It has to be.
Me to, you know, think a bit more critically about games, and I was actually, like, agreeing with a couple of things he said. Overall, great troll.
Indirectly,
love what you're
yes.
doing, man. Keep it up. Fantastic.
That is
video.
pretty good.
Made me super angry. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what all did we learn today?
Nice.
Well, we learned that Red Dead Redemption 2 is better than Shadows of the Erdtree because of grass physics.
Yes.
After 3, your decisions don't really matter. Most importantly, From Software has officially fallen off.
I'll stop it there. Great video. I still can't get over skipping to the fork. Skipping to the fork in the wall, bro. Anyways, that's gonna do it. That's gonna do it for me as well. That was entertaining. I enjoyed listening to that. That was That was really fun. I hope you guys had fun too. That was really funny. Lots of actually good like game design philosophy arguments. I actually I really enjoyed it. That's what I really like. I really like talking game philosophy, seeing new ideas. Like even though the Facebook post about the like ridiculous size of health bar, right, was kind of silly in execution, I kind of want to see that. I want to see how the game would play if you did it like that, right? Like, good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you for watching this Ashen reaction, and just remember, don't go hollow.